The godswood behind the red keep was a narrow, stubborn strip of green clinging to a hill of bruised red stone and towers that drank the sky. At dusk, the city's noise went to a distant hiss, as if the river had found its way into every alley to drown the clamor. The air smelt of dust and cypress and the remnant perfume of roses that did not belong in this hot southern garden. The weirwood had no face. Its bark was smooth and mottled, and the leaves that should have been a northern red were a tired, sun-sick green. Eddard Stark stood beneath it anyway, because habit was a stronger thing than comfort. His hands were laced behind him. He listened for leaves that did not whisper. Footsteps made a quieter sound on the crushed shell paths than they ought to have. He knew that stealth and the shape of it. He did not turn when the man in silk reached the edge of the pool of shadow beneath the cypress. A scent like cinnamon and powder drifted over the grass. "You are predictable, Lord Stark," Varys said, gentle as rain that did not fall. "It is one of your more admirable qualities. If you wished to flatter me, you would have written to Winterfell," Ned said. He watched the broken lattice of sky through the leaves. "You said it was urgent." "It is, my lord. The king's fever climbs like ivy. If you would change anything, you have the span of a single night's courage to make it so." Varys's hands folded, the sleeves of his lilac robe licking the air like slow tongues. "And you will need a companion I believe you would sooner gut than greet." Ned looked then. Varys's moon-pale face was open, his eyes shiny as pearl. Beyond him, another figure stood where the path bent, the torchlight from the red keep flickering along a plain white cloak and the edge of a golden head. The man's arms were folded. He leaned as if out of habit, as if walls were for lounging against, as if kings were for killing. "Ser Jaime," Ned said. "Ned?" The Kingslayer returned and smiled quickly, like a blade flash. They regarded each other in the little quiet under trees that pretended at sanctuary. Ned saw a boy's handsome shape grown into a man's scorn. He saw a son of Casterly Rock that had never known hunger or snow or counsel he did not wish to hear. He saw the man who had once shoved a boy out a tower window, and the man who had put a sword in a mad king to save a city. He held all those at once because truth seldom came in only one face. Varys stepped away like a curtain drifting aside, leaving them to each other. "Why did you ask him to bring you here?" Ned said, "Because there was no use in dancing." "I didn't." Jaime pushed off the wall. "He asked me. He said you wanted a thing you could not stomach asking for yourself." "I didn't ask for you," Ned said, "but I asked for a chance at the realm's peace." Jaime laughed softly and came closer. "There's no such thing, Stark. Peace is for singers and tombs." "You look like both." "You call me Stark as children do," Ned said, not unkindly. "You call me Kingslayer. It is what you did, and what I had to do." Jaime's gaze flicked across the weirwood's pale trunk, unreadable. "The spymaster thinks you are not a man to waste words. I am here, then. Say them." Ned stood very straight. The light was going. The wind made hardly any sound, as if it feared the walls. "If I speak, I ask that you hear, not for the pride of it, for the consequence." Jaime's expression sharpened. He lifted his chin in a little tilt that might have been impatience. "Speak. Your sister's children are not the king's," Ned said. They were quiet a moment, and in that moment the garden seemed to hold its breath, as if the trees remembered snow after all. Jaime gave a sound that might have been amusement dressed as disbelief. "We are far past the point of coyness, then. I did not come to be coy, and yet you come to me with this." Jaime took one step, then another, the chain of his sword belt whispering. "If you know, you also must know what it means when you say it aloud. It means that by law the throne passes to Robert's brother, Stannis," Ned said. "It means a quiet blade can travel a path I would rather it didn't. It means your sister's pride will make war of truth." Jaime's mouth crooked. Not a smile, but an old habit that pretended it won. "And what do you think I will do with truth, my lord hand? Put it in the white book between slew my liege with steel and bedded my blood?" Ned did not look away from him. "I think you are weary of what your name has become. I think if you could cut away a part of yourself, you would. I think you love your sister and your children, and you believe those things cannot live in the same house as the law. A beat of silence. Then Jaime's eyes cooled as if hardening to beaten metal. What do you offer me? Legitimacy for the realm and life for your blood, Ned said. Your sister must answer for treason and incest. The children must not pay for the sins that made them. Stannis will be king, and you will swear your sword to his safety. You will do so with me beside you. I will speak for you, Ser Jaime, before the realm and before the king that is to come. I will call what you did for Aerys a service, not a crime. I will say so where men can hear and see. I will not lie about what you did to my boy, but I will not demand your head if you will help me keep the city from burning. Jaime's gaze flicked, just once, to the weirwood's leaves. Your boy. He lives? Ned said, and saw the surprise that tightened Jaime's eyes. He is my son still. You cannot unmake that, nor will I unmake yours. Jaime folded his arms once more, but it was a defensive motion now, something a man might do in cold without admitting he is cold. This would be mercy as snare. It would be mercy as rope, Ned said. To pull a city out of a well. Jaime tilted his head. And if I refuse? Then I confess to the queen, and she will run or strike before Robert dies. You'll help her, and we will have war before the poor can hide in the cellars. And if I accept, you mean to put a stag where a lion sits. I mean to put the law where it belongs. If we are to speak in sigils, then yes. Jaime walked in a slow circle, his boots grinding shells. You would have me betray my sister. I would have you tell the truth. Truth is a blade. It cuts what holds men together. Ned felt the weight of the sword he did not carry into gardens. He thought of Kat's small hand on his sleeve the morning he rode south. He thought of Arya's wiry arms and Sansa's singing, and Robb's pride kept under careful curb. He thought of a boy in a bed in a tower in the north, breathing slow. Sometimes things must be cut to heal, Ser Jaime. The light was more shadow than light. Jaime stopped his circuit. You would speak for me. I would speak for the city. And my father? Ned was quiet. The cypress threw long fingers across the path. If he raises his banners, there will be blood in the riverlands and in the streets of this city. If he does not, there can be at least the promise that House Lannister loses no sons to the sword. Only titles and lies. Jaime's laugh was soft and ugly and honest. He'd sooner bleed the west dry than let me be named Oathkeeper by your northern mouth. You may be named by your own deeds. Ned inclined his head toward the keep. The king has not long, Ser Jaime. I will place the law before the council tomorrow, with or without you. If you are there, I will say what I have promised to say. If you are not, I will still say what is true. Jaime's fingers tapped his elbow, an idle princely rhythm he'd learned young and never lost. It stopped. He exhaled. The truth then, he said, as if trying the flavor of the word on his tongue. I will come. I will listen. I will not promise more than that. Ned nodded. For most men, listening is the more difficult. Jaime's smile had no mirth in it. You've never tried to tell my sister no. Varys's soft shoes breathed back along the path. We are all telling her no in different languages, he said. But the queen has ever been a quick study. He lifted his hands in some courtly gesture that was not quite a bow. My lords, the night grows short. Jaime looked at Ned, and something like rue passed through his face. If this ends badly, Stark, I hope you die first. You would hate to watch the rest. If this ends badly, Ned said, there may be no watching left for anyone. When Ned left the garden, the air under the walls felt warmer, the city louder. He thought of the notched, unfeeling face of a proper weirwood and tried to imagine it here. He had chosen a hard path. He only hoped it was not a proud one dressed as necessity. He slept little. He wrote 2 letters in his careful soldier's hand, one to Stannis at Dragonstone and one to Renly, and sealed them with the dire wolf and the hand's badge both. He sent Tomard and Vayan with the first to the fastest ship Varys said would not ask questions. He sent the second through the street of the sisters with a man he did not know and did not have time to learn, and told himself that hope, too, could be temperate when rationed. At dawn, the city bristled in a light that made the domes and spires look like bones thrust from flesh. The Red Keep's halls filled with the weightless bustle that comes when people feel a storm and pretend there is only wind. Robert Baratheon lay drowning in sweet wine and rot, and called some dead woman's name. Pycelle swore he would live longer than fear wanted and shorter than love begged. The small council gathered with its familiar bitter humor. Baelish with his amiable greed, Pycelle with his rheum, Varys with his hands folded like a prayer he did not believe, Renly with a smile that made many friends and disguised what he wanted, which was more than laughter. Ned placed the king's sealed paper on the table and did not look at Littlefinger when he did it. He looked at Lord Renly and said, "Send your men to the Red Keep's gates. Tell them they open to no orders save mine and the king's seal. And if the city watch objects?" Renly's eyes were friendly, skeptical. "They may object," Ned said. "As men do, they will still obey." He turned to Varys. "Janos Slint has taken coin twice in the last year. Once to arrest a butcher whose guildmaster paid for the pleasure. Once to look away while men went missing on the Street of Silk. Give him the coin for a third time." He finally let his gaze touch Baelish. "From the royal treasury, twice what he was given last. And put City Watch wives and children within the keep, locked and fed and safe." Peter Baelish's eyes smiled for him before his mouth did. "The hand grows cunning. How pretty." "I am too old to learn pretty," Ned said. He felt his heart pound in his chest and disliked the sensation. "I will be plain. I have the king's words. I will place the law before the throne. Those who would argue may argue in front of steel." "Whose steel?" Renly said, light as if speaking of tourney lists. "Mine," Ned said, and faced Ser Barristan Selmy as the old knight entered. "And those who swore the old oaths." Barristan's lined face was as grave as stone. "What do you ask of me, my Lord Hand?" "Honor," Ned said, and the word felt simple in his mouth and complicated as the city. The kind that lives in the open. When they came to the throne room, the light through the high windows made columns of dust that looked like they wanted to be prayer. Joffrey sat on the steps below his father's seat like a boy who had found a high chair for mischief. Cersei stood to his right, elegant as a sword in its scabbard. Tommen and Myrcella were not present. Their nursemaids had been instructed to take them to the castle gardens and keep them there until the bells rang thrice. The small folk would not be admitted. They had seen enough kings and blood to drink for 3 generations. Ned walked to the iron boundary where good manners said a man should bow and the truth said a man should speak. He held up the sealed letter. "The king commands," he said, and the hush in the hall made his voice sound larger than his body. "My lords and ladies, by Robert Baratheon's will and seal, I am named Lord Protector of the realm until the true heir takes the throne. I call Stannis Baratheon the rightful heir." There was a tick of silence like a heartbeat learning a new rhythm. Then Cersei laughed. It was a scythe. "Tear up that piece of paper, Lord Stark." She did not look at the seal. She looked at him as if she could see winter under his skin and despise it. "You forget where you stand." Ned did not remove his gaze from the queen. "I remember. I have not forgotten that my duty is not to where I stand but to what stands behind me." Joffrey rose. His mouth had none of his mother's beauty when it twisted. "I am the king." "No," Renly said, almost kindly. "You are your mother's son." The Kingsguard shifted. Ser Boros drew breath like a toad. Ser Marin's eyes were pale as milk and twice as comforting. Barristan Selmy planted his sword's point on the stone and leaned both hands atop the pommel. A man too old to be interested in quick movements. Jaime was there in his white cloak, the throw of his shoulders elegant, the line of his jaw too beautiful for the room. He had not spoken. He looked at Cersei for a breath longer than a lover would if he meant to lie to himself. Then he looked at the throne and the boy on its steps, at the letter in Ned's hand, at Barristan, at the hall with its painted 7 on the floor and its stale incense. He reached up and undid the clasp of his cloak. The white slithered to the floor, a soft sound that still felt like steel. There was a murmur, then a silence that seemed to surprise itself. Jaime let the cloak lie where it fell, as if he'd dropped a disguise he was tired of wearing. He took 2 steps forward and put himself between Joffrey and the hall without lifting his sword. "The law names Stannis," he said, his voice even. "I am a sworn son of the Kingsguard. I will guard the king. I will not name who wears a crown. I will guard the king who is lawful when he sits where he should." Cersei's eyes flared, the green in them flashing like a cat's in lamplight. "Jaime," she said, a name broken and edged. He did not look at her. "My lady," he said, a stranger's courtesy. "Seize them," she said to the city watch that lined the walls like brass buttons on a too-tight coat. "All of them." Janos Slynt hesitated for a full count of 3, and in that count Ned saw wives and children being shepherded within stone. The heavy doors of a keep slamming. How fear could be a more loyal chain than coin. Then Slynt barked a different order than the one the queen's mouth had shaped. "Hold." The watchmen did what men did best when asked to risk their skins for a cause they did not own. They stood very still. Cersei's mouth thinned. "Peter," she said without looking, as if calling for a servant she had once owned. Baelish made an apologetic face that would have charmed an executioner. "Alas, my queen, I am but a poor broker. You have nothing in my ledger today." "Traitor," she said as if the sound were prayer, and when sound failed her, she reached for steel. Meryn and Boros were quicker. Their blades rang, and in that first bright note the hall decided its shape. Renly's men surged in from the side doors, blue-green stags on their chests and a love for their handsome lord in their grins. Barristan moved with a grace that made age a lie. Jaime drew at last, the golden sword flashing, not towards Ned or Renly, but to knock aside Boros's lunge that would have split a boy's arm and turned him into a king no more. Joffrey screamed, a small, thin sound that made him what he was. Ned stepped forward until he could hear the wind scrape iron and smell sweat. He held up the letter again, ridiculous and necessary, and called, "By the king's will, stand down. The city is not your quarrel." Perhaps it was the strangeness of the Kingslayer's stance in front of the boy, or Barristan's unyielding rock of a posture, or perhaps it was that Slynt's men did not move. The moment turned. Boros went to a knee with his sword up to block, and Barristan rapped it aside and took him gently to the floor with a turn of steel that looked like kindness and was not. Meryn fell backwards down the steps, hitting his head hard enough to ring his bell for a season. Cersei stood very still. Her face had become a mask. "You would do this," she said, not to Ned and not to Jaime, but to something she alone could see. "You would make me beg where all the city can see me kneel. I would make you answer where the city can hear truth," Ned said, and his voice did not raise. "Take the queen to her apartments. She is to be guarded by men who answer to the hand and to the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. She is to see no one but her children and the septa. She is to send no letters. Maester Pycelle will attend the king, and only the king. Joffrey Baratheon will be kept safe in his chambers with Ser Barristan at his door. If anyone seeks to move him without my seal and Ser Barristan's presence, that one will lose the hand he uses to open the door." Renly's laugh was bright, and it shocked the quiet. "Gods, Eddard, where have you been hiding this man?" "Learning what my eyes were for," Ned said, and heard Sansa's voice in his head, singing, and Arya's too, like a knife in winter. They carried Cersei away without binding her. She walked like a queen and a condemned thing, both truths yoked together. She looked at Jaime once only. What passed between them was a thread, taut and gleaming, and might have dragged a lesser man by the throat. Jaime's face did not move. The thread snapped. Varys was very helpful that day in the ways that did not show. Letters were paused in unseen nets. Lancel Lannister, pale and frightened and smelling of wine that did not sleep in cups, went white as parchment when Ned's men found him behind the screens with a decanter and his guilt wide open on his face. He confessed faster than any man who believed himself brave. What he confessed was less than what he was guilty of and more than what he could bear. It was enough to show how the queen had oiled the king toward his end. Not murder, Pycelle would say, wringing his frail, falsely strong hands. Not quite, but it was enough to name sin. Ned set the city to watch for smoke under the ground and brought the pyromancers in daylight to the throne room. He told them to count. He made them open their ledgers with their cramped green hands. Jaime stood by when they did. When they spoke of caches, of clay pots swelling like diseased fruit under septs and inns and walls, Ned watched the light pare away what arrogance had left in Jaime's eyes. "I will take you to 3 vaults in the city," Jaime said softly when the pyromancers had scraped and bowed their way out. "There are more. I learned enough from Ares to know where to listen for ghosts." "You knew," Ned said. "I remembered," Jaime said. "Robert died on a windless evening that pressed the river's stink up against the keep like a hand." Bells tolled and the city sighed as if some held breath had been shared by all. Ned stood at a window with his hand on stone and watched gulls circle the masts like white lies. He did not weep for Robert. His tears for the man had been shed in a muddy tent in the trampled moons ago, when he saw what years and victories had made of a bright boy. He sent riders down every road like hounds, with orders and truth, and Robert's seal leaned on them like a heavy palm. He sent men to Dragonstone with the letter and with the news. He slept as a soldier in a long campaign, in snatches on benches and on a chair by a map, and woke as the bells changed song. Stannis came like a storm that did not care whether men used the word. His banners were rough and lean. His hall had been starved of company and food both. His jaw looked like something carved with a dull knife out of anger. He entered the throne room without his brother's swagger, without any man's, and he looked at the throne not as a prize but as a wound that needed stitching. When Ned knelt to him, Stannis's mouth barely moved. "Rise," he said. "We have too few men who bend to truth to wear out their knees." Ned rose and placed the city's keys in Stannis's hand. It did not become easier. Truth seldom does. The trial that followed was not the spectacle Cersei would have made it. Stannis had no taste for pageant. He convened a panel of lords who did not owe him smiles. Barristan sat for the Kingsguard, dour and fair. Grand Maester Pycelle sat and made much of his chain. Lord Renly sat because the realm must see a Baratheon face that wasn't a scowl. Varys lurked at the edges like a scent. Peter Baelish took notes and made none of them open, and Ned, as hand, stood and called witnesses in a voice that hurt him. They brought out Lancel first. He trembled and sweated and blurted, and without Cersei's hand in his hair and mouth in his ear, he was a boy unstrung. He spoke of strong wine and sweetness and a queen's smile. Pycelle pursed his lips and protested that a wineskin could not be an assassin. Even he could not bear to dress this as healing. There were murmurs among the lords, ugly and grateful both, like men who want a reason to hate a woman they already fear. They brought out Ser Boros next and then Ser Meryn, each as faithful and brave as a sack of flour. Their contradictions were more eloquent than their oaths. Varys's little birds had done their quiet work. So had the ledgers from the Alchemists' Guild. It was enough to paint a picture in which a queen was the central god. Then Ned called Jaime Lannister. It made a different sound when he stepped into the light. Men leaned forward who had not moved at all before. The white book of the Kingsguard lay open upon its stand, as if a promise of absolution or a record of sins was something that parchment could hold. Jaime looked at the panel and then at the empty throne. He did not kneel. It was not insolence, but that he had no kneeling left to do. He held his head up and he spoke. He did not confess at first. He told a story. He told of a boy with a sword too long for his arm and a dream that looked like his sister's hair in sunlight. He told of tangents and tilts and how honor grows like a tree until a fire comes. He told of a king whose laugh was a wall and whose heart had bruised around a hole. And then he told of another king who had liked to hear things burn. He told of wildfire and whispers, of a city that smelled of fear and alchemist's piss, and of a day when he stood on a white stair and made a choice. He did not gild it. He said the words, "I killed the king I was sworn to protect. I did it because he would have turned the city to light and ash. I would do it again." Barristan's head lowered, just a fraction, and the shame or the relief in that motion rang louder than the bells had. Pycelle made a noise of affront that was also a cough. Stannis's eyes did not move. Jaime did not look at Cersei where she sat, dangerous as a stopped-up river. He looked at Stannis. The law is the law. Call your book and your gods. But if you mean to save a city, look under it first. Wildfire sat there like a casket waiting to be opened. I put my hand on that lid once. I will not again. Did you father the Queen's children? Stannis asked. He did not make much of voice or ceremony. He spoke like flint strikes. Jaime's jaw set. He closed his eyes once, briefly, like a man stepping into cold water. When he opened them, he looked at Ned Stark. Ned did not nod. He did not shake his head. He held the line that ran through him with both hands and prayed to a god that did not live here. Yes, Jaime said. No flourish. No apology. A sound like something heavy being put down. I did. A murmur moved through the hall like a cut through cloth. Renly's mouth thinned. Baelish's quill paused, then danced again. Pycelle made a long, appalled humming. Barristan's face might have been the wall itself. Stannis's jaw clenched, and in that clench was a lifetime of grudges against those who had not followed the rules that govern men because they were men. By that admission, Stannis said, Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella are illegitimate and cannot inherit the throne. They can still eat and breathe, Ned said quietly. Cersei laughed then, and there was madness in it. A crack in stone that showed fire beneath. Breathe? Do you imagine I will kneel and watch you send my children to some northern kennel to be raised on salt and silence? Do you think I will let you wipe their names away like ink in rain? Stannis did not look at her when he spoke. The Privy Council will decide their fates according to law. They will not be harmed. The Queen, he paused on the word as if it stuck, will be confined until sentence is passed. Cersei rose. The guards moved. Her smile was for Jaime and was a wound. And you, she said softly. What of you, beloved? Jaime had never looked more beautiful than he did then, and more tired. I swore my vows, he said, and his voice was lower than a whisper. And I kept the ones that mattered. When they took her away, she did not struggle. She walked like a woman going to a wedding she had not planned. Her hair shone. The hall breathed again once the door had swallowed her. They met in the Hand's solar after, the door barred and the lamp trimmed low. Renly lounged like a cat. Stannis stood as if sitting were a luxury he refused himself. Davos Seaworth, summoned in from the ships and given no time to wash the salt from his beard, stood with his hands clasped behind his back like a man who could not remember how men with 10 fingers did it. Varys flowed. Littlefinger smiled. Barristan stood, his armor laid aside so that the man could be visible within the legend. Jaime was there without the white cloak, his hair unbraided, a man in a handsome tunic who looked strangely young without the uniform of his sins. We have 3 problems, Stannis said, ticking them with a hand that had no patience for politics. The Lannisters in the west, the Tyrells and my brother Renly's intentions. The Riverlands if Lord Tywin continues to burn them for sport. 4, Ned said. The city under our feet. He pushed a list across the table. Warehouses, doors, cellars marked in a hand that did not often write so much. The alchemist spoke truth. There is a great deal of wildfire, some of it sealed inside the walls. We must dig it out before anyone thinks to play king with a torch. Jaime's eyes moved over the list and he put his palm on a name. Here, he said. That one is under a set of stairs in a granary. No one must be allowed near it who doesn't know what he's touching. Good, said Stannis curtly, as if praise might make a man soft. Lord Varys, I do not care how you find the men you need, but find them. Ser Barristan, I will have you oversee the removal. It will be done, Barristan said. Renly, Stannis said, turning his head with effort and dislike. You will not name yourself king. Renly smiled like a man in a room he didn't own and didn't need to. I will not do it today. You will not do it at all if you value your home. My value lies wherever my friends think it does, Renly said, and his smile was amiable and empty. I have many friends. You have many dinners, Stannis said. I have a city. And the law. Between the two of us, we might make a realm. Renly's gaze moved to Ned and warmed in a way that was not a smile. He has you, brother. That is not a small thing. Nor is it any bomb, Stannis said dryly. They argued. It was the kind of argument that goes on a long time because it is not about words but about men's shapes. Ned let them have it and gave structure where he could. The watch would be purged and placed under a captain whose loyalty could be bought with something better than coin. The small folk would be fed with grain taken from warehouses that had once served Lannister feasts. Stannis would be seen in the streets, if only long enough to be recognized by the carts that would be overturned if he wasn't. The faith would be made to bless the process they had not commanded. A message would go to Casterly. Rock, not to taunt but to present the facts as they were. The children alive and removed from succession, the queen under confinement, the realm calling the law by its name. Tywin Lannister will answer with steel, Davos said quietly. Truth is bad coin in a lord's purse. He will answer, Stannis said. I will answer back. Send me, Renly said cheerfully. I look very well in a tent. Send me, Jaime said, and the words dropped like a stone into a pool that had been pretending to be still. They all looked at him. He met only Ned's eyes, as if trusting that gaze not to flinch. Send me to my father. To do what? Stannis asked, incredulous. Beg him to forgive you? To keep him from doing something he cannot take back. Jaime's voice did not waver. He will come for the queen. He will tell himself he comes for honor and blood. He will want to show you what happens when you put a stag on a lion's chair. He will light the Riverlands like a torch again. Send me to him with what there is of mercy. A letter from the king. A pardon that names the deeds that matter and the ones that damn me both. Give me the words to say, and I will say them before he brands your name on half the south. Stannis's lips thinned. You would go into the lion's mouth with our message because you think yourself his son still. I know myself his son, Jaime said, and a shadow of that thread with Cersei moved behind his eyes. And I know he would trade 20 sons for the rock. He might, Varys murmured, but he would not trade the story they tell of him when he is dead. Lord Tywin's name is an edifice. He will not like seeing a crack in it named truth. Let him dislike it, Stannis said. I write no pardons to make men comfortable. If you go, Ser Jaime, you go under guard as a hostage. No, Ned said. He goes as a son. Jaime's head turned to him with such sudden relief that Ned nearly looked away. Stannis stared at him as if he'd suggested crowning a cat. Lord Stark, Stannis said carefully. You mistake me for your brother. I knew my brother, Ned returned, his voice even. He would have been made weak by kindness and strong by pity. I am neither. I am telling you what the realm needs. Ser Jaime Lannister has admitted before the realm that he fathered the queen's children and that he slew a mad king to save a city. No man will trust him or forgive him. They will listen to him, though. They will watch for his father's answer in his eyes. We can make a lesson of him or a tool. We should use what the day gives us. Stannis held his gaze for a long count and then looked away, not because he had been convinced, but because he had been outflanked by necessity. Very well, he said. I will write. The terms are simple. The queen confined at the capital until sentence. The children fostered where they cannot be used. Lord Tywin to bring his banners down and present himself before the throne to answer for his burning of the Riverlands. The Rock to supply grain to the capital for a year to answer the poor, and no sword raised by House Lannister, else I strip him of office and land both. He will never accept, Renly said. Then we will fight, Stannis said. But we will fight with the city washed of wildfire and the law under our feet.
Ned nodded.
And Ser Jaime will have done the realm one service more. Jaime laughed. It was not kind to himself. Soon I shall have a list worth a book. That night, Jaime went to see Cersei. Ned gave him the pass to the Queen's Guard and provided men. He trusted to stand outside her door and hear nothing. He did not wish to know the words that passed between the twins, only that when Jaime came out, his face was set like a scar once it stops bleeding. He nodded to Ned as to a man who had struck him and done him a kindness both. She asked me if I still loved her, he said without being asked. I told her I do. It is not the same thing as doing her bidding. She will make it so, Ned said. She will try, Jaime said, and I will let her fail. They arranged an escort of 20 men. 4 of the Kingsguard loyal to the oath rather than the queen. Barristan chose them with the care of a father who has seen his sons live too long, and 16 spears from the Vale who had no love for lions and no hatred that could not be pointed elsewhere. Ser Davos rode with them as the king's eyes, plain and honest and smelling of salt. He liked the Kingslayer less than he liked rats, which made him perfect. They went under parley, white flags and a stag's banner, and the letter in Davos's pouch sealed with dark red wax that looked too much like blood not to be deliberate. They took the Rose Road and rode through fields that looked at them with frightened eyes. Twice they were shadowed by men in red cloaks who did not come closer. Once a boy tried to sell them a sack of walnuts and burst into tears when Jaime overpaid him. The nights were cold and restless and full of horses' damp breath. They found Lord Tywin at a camp west of the Red Fork, his pavilions set up like a city that believed in its own walls. He received them in a tent large as a feasting hall and colder than most winter mornings. He did not offer wine. He did not look at his son until such a time as he had decided to look would have been disrespectful to himself to deny. Your hair grows too long, Lord Tywin said. It makes you look like a fool. I am a fool, Jaime said lightly. I just hoped I wore it better. Davos produced the letter and did not bow. His fingers were blunt scar and his eyes were as honest as a tide. Tywin broke the seal without ceremony and read without letting his face alter. He finished and folded it once and laid it on the table with a care that might have meant respect or that he disliked the feel of the paper. The king proposes generous terms, he said. The king proposes peace, Davos answered. Peace is seldom generous, Tywin said. He finally looked into his son's face and measured what he saw. You have made a fool of yourself before the realm. I have told the truth, Jaime said. It was not a defense so much as a description. You have shamed your house. My house shamed itself, Jaime said, and if there was a tremor in it, it was not one any man in that tent would admit to hearing. We lied to the realm. I cut that lie open. There is no pride in it. There is no joy. It is done. Tywin's lips did not move, but the air in the tent felt thinner. House Lannister does not answer to anyone's cutting. It answers to the crown, Davos said, calm as a man counting fish. It does today. Tywin spared him a glance that should have killed lesser men. And you are the king's fisherman. I am the king's man, Davos said, and in the simplicity of that lay a thing Tywin had never owned. Tywin looked back down at the letter. Grain to the capital for a year. The queen confined rather than executed. The children taken away like puppies and put in other men's houses. And I present myself to be judged for protecting my own lands from Riverland rabble and Stark impudence. There will be judgment, Davos said. And law. You mean humiliation, Tywin said. He lifted the letter. You mean to demonstrate that stags do not need lions. That is the whole of this. I mean to demonstrate that lions need not eat their own, Jaime said before he could stop himself. Tywin's gaze lanced him. You think I will forgive you because you use words that sound like mine. If you were my steward, I would remove your tongue for less. I am not your steward, Jaime said, and smiled without pleasure. I am your son. You were, Tywin said. The tent went very quiet. Davos did not shift. The Kingsguard did not. Outside there was the sound of rain beginning, a slow, relentless patter on canvas. Stannis Baratheon would have your banners down and your knees on stone, Davos said. He will have them by steel or by ink. Take ink, my lord. Your people cannot eat your honor when the rivers flood. Tywin looked down at the letter again, at the wax, at his own hand that had never trembled and did not now. He closed his eyes briefly, and in that blink was an old man who had built obedience into an altar and his name into a tower that had lost one stone too many to be stable. When he opened them, they were clear. I will send grain, he said. I will write regarding the queen. He paused, and Davos inclined his head. hearing the unspoken. I will not come to kneel. I will not present myself for scolding by a court that thinks itself my judge. If the king wishes to strip me of office, he may write a paper. I will burn it to warm a beggar. You will bring swords to the trident, Davos said, quiet as a fog. I will not bring them to the capital, Tywin answered. Then the city will live, Davos said, because sometimes one breath is victory. When they left the tent, Jaime felt hollowed, as if something had been scooped from his chest with a dull spoon. Davos walked beside him, boots sinking in the new mud. The rain made the camp smell cleaner than men do. I am sorry for you, Davos said after a long time. For me? Jaime bit the words off as if they were too sweet. Why? You did a hard thing and will never be thanked for it, Davos said. You have not learned to prefer that. You will if you live. Jaime laughed, a sound like coins thrown on a table. I have preferred many wrong things. Perhaps I will learn the right ones. They rode back to the city with the rain at their backs and 3 letters in their pouch that were not what they had hoped and were better than war. Stannis read them without blinking and said, We will take what we can take. The queen will not hang. The children go to separate houses, none to the rock. The city will be fed. Dorne, Ned said, send Myrcella to Sunspear. They will treat her well because they are proud. Tommen, give him to Oldtown, to the Hightowers, who are pious when it profits them and careful always. Joffrey, send him to the Wall. He is a boy, Renly protested. The Wall will freeze him dead in a year. Then make him a squire to a hard man in the Stormlands, Stannis snapped. We will not make a martyr of him. We will not keep him here where his mother can whisper. Let me take him, Barristan said, surprising them all. I will make a man of him or a monk. Either might suit. Stannis considered. Very well. Cersei came to see her children the day they were to be sent away. There were no loud words, only large ones, heavy as stone and twice as cold. She kissed Tommen's hair and made no sound. She held Myrcella's face between her hands and said, You will be loved. She looked at Joffrey for a very long time and said nothing at all. He did not speak either, for once, as if he had finally recognized that silence can be a blade too. To Jaime, she said, You have killed me. No, he said quietly. I have changed the name of the tomb. She struck him then. He did not move. He took the slap like a benediction from a god he no longer served. When he was gone, he put his hand to his cheek and felt nothing. The city began to heal in the ways cities do when they are not being starved or burned. Markets opened because men like to buy and sell. Small folk began to curse the king by name rather than by hunger. The faith pronounced itself gratified that the realm had been delivered of sin by its own mechanism, which is to say, not by them, and took credit anyway. Stannis held court with a severity that was almost merciful because it was predictable. Ned spoke for mercy where law allowed it. Renly was sent south to keep his friends from turning into dragons. Varys was everywhere and nowhere. Littlefinger made coin out of the taxes the city paid when fear ebbed and pretended that meant he loved peace. Jaime took rooms in the White Sword Tower again and stood long in front of the White Book. He opened to the page where his name was written in a hand that had not thought to last so long. The entries were short and ugly. Squired at 14. Knighted at 15. Named to the Kingsguard at 17. Slew Aerys II Targaryen. He borrowed a quill and added 3 lines in a careful, almost childish script he had to relearn because his hand shook. Admitted before the realm that he had fathered the queen's children. Stood before the boy who would not be king and guarded him from his mother's wrath. Revealed the wildfire beneath the city and saw it dug out. He did not write the whole of it. Books do not want truth. They want records. Ned came to him once, alone, the quiet of the room like a church. Jaime did not turn, because his mind had been on a page where Barristan Selmy's deeds filled 3 pages like a hymn, and he preferred to read the past than to be read by the present. You have done what you said, Ned said. That is all a man can expect of himself. You pardoned me, Jaime answered, and used me. I told you I would. You did. He turned then and looked into the face of the man who had cut him and bound him in the same breath. "Does it ease your anger? About your boy?" "No," Ned said. Honesty sat well on him. Anger never had. "Nothing will. But it eases my fear. There are fewer fires under our feet today than there were yesterday. That counts for a kind of peace." Jaime looked past him to the window that did not show the sea but might as well have. "You do not have to be kind to me, Lord Stark." "I am not," Ned said. "I am practical. The two are sometimes cousins." Jaime smiled crookedly. "I learned that late. Better than not at all." They stood like that, men separated by the entire history of a kingdom and by what they had done to sons, for a while. Then Ned left, because work breeds more work, and Jaime went back to the book, because words do not change themselves. In the months that followed, the realm did not collapse, which in Westeros is a kind of miracle. Tywin Lannister sent grain and gold grudgingly. He set his banners at the Trident and did not cross. He burned only what he claimed belonged to brigands and farmers with bad manners. There were skirmishes in the Riverlands with men who had been given red cloaks but not orders. There were raids. There were letters full of knives wrapped in silk. There was no war that swallowed the city whole. Renly gathered friends in the south and learned that some men love a handsome king not because he is king but because he is handsome. He smiled and played and sent ravens and did not put a crown on his head. Stannis judged and calculated and slept like a miser. The small council was a table of men who disliked each other enough to be honest. Cersei did not beg. She did not confess. The sentence, when it came, was as light as truth allows when it is made of rock. She would be confined in a gentle prison to live out her days, permitted to see her children once each season in places chosen by the crown and guarded by men who would cut her hands off before they let her speak a word she meant. She raised her chin and nodded. She did not weep. She did not look at Jaime. He did not look at her, because it felt like looking at his own reflection in a pool he had muddied and could not bear to see cleared. Sansa Stark walked very carefully through this new court, where she was no longer promised to a king and no longer singing in her heart. Arya grew leaner with secrets and friends made of cats and girls with knives for smiles. Ned watched his daughters learn the south and thought often of the north, where snow made men slower and truer. He wrote to Robb and to Catelyn until the quills wore flat. He told himself he would go home once the city learned how to keep itself from trying to die. On a morning when the sky lay low like a blanket smoothed by a careful mother, Jaime rode through Flea Bottom with Barristan. The old knight kept his back straight because he had no other posture. Children called out to them not as heroes but as men on horses, and that was good. They crossed a spot where once, under the stones, there had been green fire dreaming of becoming sky, and Jaime felt the absence like a healed bone before rain. He breathed easier. "Do you repent?" Barristan asked him suddenly, as men ask each other hard questions when they are tired of easy ones. "Which thing?" Jaime said, and meant it. "All of them," Barristan said, and meant that too. Jaime thought. The streets smelt of onion and dung and dye. "I regret." He chose the word like a man selects a blade from a rack. "Repentance is for sins against gods. I have sinned against men. I regret that I lied. I regret that I made of truth a weapon only because I could not think of another. I regret that when I was young I loved like a sword loves a throat." Barristan's mouth did not move, but his eyes softened. "That is more than most men know how to say out loud. I am trying to learn new vows," Jaime said, smiling faintly. "Old ones did not fit." "Keep one oath," Barristan said. "The rest will follow." "Which?" "The one you made to yourself in that hall," Barristan said. "When you decided to stand between a boy and his mother's ruin." Jaime laughed softly. "I did not know I had said it." "You did," Barristan said. "Some oaths speak without mouths." They rode on, and the city moved around them, alive in the way men are when they have not been asked to die for the pride of those whom they cannot name. At the end of that year, winter bit at the edges of the land, and the nights came earlier than men liked, and the stars felt closer in a way that made farmers superstitious. Ned walked once more to the garden without a face. He stood beneath the pale tree and felt the heat that still lingered in the stones. Varys came as he did and did not touch him. "You have done something unlikely," the eunuch said conversationally. "You have made honesty contagious." "Only in small doses," Ned said. "They are the only safe ones," Varys smiled. "There are letters from the wall. Jon Snow does well. He has not died of bad stew or good men. The Lord Commander says he is a good squire and a better listener." Ned's mouth moved without his consent. He had not smiled much of late, and it felt stiff. "Thank you. Peter is angry with you," Varys added, "because news must be mixed to be balanced. You have made the city safer. It is bad for business." "Perhaps his business will change," Ned said. "Men do not change," Varys murmured. "They choose better rooms." "And you," Ned said, turning to the man at last, "what room have you chosen?" "One with many doors," Varys answered promptly, "and a single bed." Ned laughed, and it surprised them both. He looked up at the leaves that were not his gods and said, quietly, "I am ready to go home." "You are not allowed," Varys said, with the frankness he used to wound with care. "Not yet. The king likes your face between him and the lords. You will give him 2 more years if you can. Maybe 3. The realm will thank you by letting you leave in peace and by forgetting to sing your song." "I am not a song," Ned said. "No," Varys agreed. "You are the quiet between them." When he left the garden, the evening air tasted less like stone and more like river. He stood on a balcony and watched gulls cut circles in an indifferent sky and thought how far mercy can travel when it has a road to walk and a shape to wear. It looked like a golden knight standing where men could see him instead of where he had hidden. It looked like a king who did not smile and did not lie. It looked like a girl who could still sing and a girl who could still run. It looked like truth, ugly and useful, tied to law with a rope that had been braided out of pride and regret and the stubbornness men like Eddard Stark mistake for virtue. Jaime stood once more before the White Book, alone, and added one more line. Rode to his father's camp under parley and brought back letters instead of swords. It was nothing men would sing of. He dipped the quill again, then did not write what his hand wanted to confess. Loved his sister and did not obey her. Loved his name and tried to deserve it. Loved his life and finally knew what for. He set the quill aside and closed the book softly. He walked to the window and looked out at the city that had almost burned twice for him and 1,000 times for men like him. He could feel a breeze through the stone, a thin, stubborn draft that did not belong in such a hot place. He closed his eyes and breathed it in as if it were snow.